I have always loved the ocean. I want to start there. Because by the end of this, you might assume I always feared it, that I was someone who stood at the shoreline and felt something dark looking back at me. But that is not true. I grew up on the coast of North Carolina. I learned to swim before I learned to ride a bike. The ocean was never something I was afraid of. It was the only place I ever felt completely calm. That changed 8 months ago. And I have spent every day since then trying to find the right words for what happened. I am not sure these are the right words, but they are the ones I have. My name is Claire Maddox. I am 34 years old. I took a solo sailing trip last September, a route I had done twice before. Down the Outer Banks out past Ocracoke, and then a wide arc southeast before coming back up the coast. 9 days on the water, just me, a 28-foot sloop I'd been sailing for 6 years, and enough food and fuel to be comfortable. Day 1 through 4 were fine, better than fine. The weather was clean, the wind was cooperative, and I slept better than I had in months. There is something about being on open water with no land in sight that resets something in your brain. The noise goes away, the obligations go away, it is just you and the movement and the horizon. I was happy out there. Day 5 was when the feeling started. I don't know what else to call it. The feeling. It wasn't fear exactly. It was closer to the sensation you get when you're alone in a house and you become suddenly completely convinced that you are not alone. That specific prickling awareness, that reorientation of every sense toward the question, is something here? I was in the cockpit running a routine check when it hit me. I stopped what I was doing and looked out at the water. Flat, gray, endless. I looked at the stern. I looked at the bow. I checked below deck. Everything was exactly as it should be. But the feeling did not go away. I logged it in my journal that night, wrote it off as isolation. 9 days alone on open water is a long time, and the mind does interesting things when it has nothing to push against. I had read about it before I left: mild hallucinations, auditory distortions, a tendency to assign presence to empty space. It was normal, it was documented. I told myself that and I went to sleep. Day 6. I woke up at 4 a.m. to the sound of something moving on deck. Not a loud sound, not a bang or a crash, a slow, deliberate sound. The kind of sound that has weight behind it. Footsteps, if I'm being honest, though I spent a long time afterward trying to find another word for it. A shift in the boat's movement, a settling. But I know what I heard. I have been on that boat for 6 years. I know every sound she makes. This was not one of her sounds. I lay completely still for about 30 seconds. Then I got up, grabbed the flashlight and the flare gun from the storage compartment beside my bunk, and went up through the companionway. Nothing. Deck was empty, water was calm, sky was overcast, no moon, so the darkness was heavy and total in every direction beyond the reach of my flashlight. I stood there for a long time, sweeping the beam around, over the water, along the hull, up the mast, nothing. I went back below and did not sleep again until sunrise. Day 7, the feeling was worse. It had moved, if that makes sense. On day 5, it had felt like something alongside the boat, something at the same level, keeping pace. By day 7, it felt lower, like whatever it was had gone under. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like someone who had been alone too long and was starting to come loose at the edges. I considered that. I considered it seriously. I checked my food and water, made sure I wasn't dehydrated, ran through the standard self-assessments I'd read about for solo offshore sailing. I was fine on paper, but I stopped letting my hands trail in the water off the stern. I didn't decide to stop. I just noticed one afternoon that I was keeping them in my lap, that some part of me had made that decision without consulting the rest of me. That night, I was below making dinner when the depth sounder alarm went off. The depth sounder monitors how much water is beneath the keel. I was in open ocean. The reading should have been somewhere between 60 and 120 feet, depending on the shelf. When the alarm goes off, it means the depth has dropped dangerously low, which in open water should not happen. I went to the chart plotter. The depth reading said 14 feet. I checked my position. I was exactly where I should have been. No seamounts nearby, no charted shoals, Nothing that should have put 14 feet of water under me in open ocean. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then the reading changed. 11 feet. I have no explanation for this. The boat did not ground. The keel did not touch anything. I checked the sensor afterward, and it was functioning correctly. Depth sounders work by sending a signal straight down and measuring how long it takes to bounce back. Something had bounced it back. The reading stayed between 9 and 14 feet for about 20 minutes. Then it dropped back down to open ocean depth and the alarm stopped. I sat on the cabin sole with my back against the bunk and I did not move for a long time. I want to be careful here. I am not a superstitious person. I do not believe in sea monsters. I do not believe in the kind of stories people tell about the deep ocean to make it feel more dangerous than it already is. I believe in things I can measure and document and verify, but I also believe what my instruments told me that night. Something was underneath the boat, something very large, something that stayed for 20 minutes and then left. I turned back toward the coast the next morning, day 8 instead of day 9. I told myself it was weather. There was a front moving in, and I had a reasonable case for cutting the trip short. I wrote it in the log as a weather decision. But I was running. The feeling stayed with me the entire way back. It did not intensify. It did not do anything dramatic. It simply remained. A constant low pressure behind my sternum. An awareness I could not switch off. I kept checking the depth sounder. It stayed normal, 60 feet, 80 feet, 90. I watched it the way you watch a smoke detector after you've already smelled something burning. Waiting, I made port on the evening of day 8. Tied up, shut down the systems, sat in the cockpit for a while, just feeling the stillness of the marina. Other boats around me, shore lights, sounds of people and cars and the ordinary world. The feeling faded, slowly over about an hour, like something releasing pressure. And then it was gone. I slept for 11 hours that night, deep, total, dreamless sleep. I woke up and the sun was coming through the port light and everything felt normal, and I spent about 20 minutes convincing myself that it had all been exactly what I'd told myself it was. Isolation, fatigue, a malfunctioning sensor, a whale maybe rising close beneath the hull and then diving again. Whales do that. It is a thing that happens. I almost had myself convinced. Then I went up to rinse off the deck before heading home. There were marks on the hull, not scratches, not barnacle damage, which I knew well. These were long, pale compressions in the gel coat, evenly spaced, running along the port side from just behind the bow to just ahead of the stern. Like something had pressed against the hull from below. Like something had held on. I stood on the dock and looked at those marks for a long time. I took photographs. I sent them to 2 different surveyors and a marine biologist I knew from college. The surveyors said they couldn't identify the cause. The biologist looked at the spacing and the shape and was quiet for a moment before he said he'd need more information. He never followed up. I have not taken the boat out since then. She's still in the slip. I pay the marina fees every month, and I tell myself I'm going to go back out in the spring, in the fall, after the weather clears, after work settles down. I have a reason for every season. The truth is, I don't know if I'll go back. Not because of what I think was out there. I have made my peace with not knowing what it was. There are things in the deep ocean that have never been cataloged, things that live at pressures and depths that make the surface world feel like a different planet. I accept that. I am not afraid of the unknown in the abstract. What I am afraid of is something smaller than that. It is this. On day 5, when the feeling first started, I had the distinct and specific sense that something had noticed me, not stumbled across me, not passed beneath me on its way to somewhere else. Noticed me, the way you notice something small and out of place in a familiar room. And whatever it was that I felt for the next 3 days, the presence below the boat, the weight behind my sternum, the footsteps on the deck at 4 a.m., I don't think that was it getting closer. I think that was it watching. I think it stayed below the surface because it understood on some level that surfacing would end the observation, that if I saw it clearly, if I could put a shape to it, I would no longer behave the way something unaware behaves. I think it wanted to see what I did when I didn't know I was being watched. A wand. And I think when it pressed against the hull that last night, when it held on for 20 minutes in 14 feet of water in the middle of the open ocean, I think it was deciding something. One, I don't know what it decided. I don't know if the answer was favorable. I don't know if it is still out there in that stretch of water between the banks and the shelf, doing whatever it does in the time between observations. I don't know if it remembers the boat. I don't know if it remembers me. What I know is this: the ocean is 36,000 feet deep at its lowest point. The deepest a human has ever gone in a submersible is roughly 35,000 feet. We have mapped less than 20% of the ocean floor. Less than 20%. That means 80% of what is down there has never been seen by human eyes, has never been measured, cataloged, or named, has never had a light shined on it. 80%. I used to find that beautiful. I loved the ocean my entire life. I want you to understand that. I still do. I'm just not sure anymore that it doesn't know that. I'm just not sure it doesn't know exactly where I am.